So we're going to try to have this review under the umbrella.
Yeah.
Because it started raining.
It's funny we were talking about moving the umbrella,
Yeah.
but didn't this morning.
So we're talking about Boston Legal
Season
3.
We've seen later seasons than earlier seasons, right?
Well, we saw the second half of season 3.
Oh, that's what
recently.
happened because we saw La Roquette.
Yeah.
And he wasn't there, I don't think, at the beginning of the season.
And we're going to talk about this book, which is excellent. Douglas Coupland is probably my favorite author. And I can't understand how apparently Margaret Atwood was going to be getting some sort of
Lifetime Achievement.
Lifetime Achievement sort of award.
Well,
and
she's a lot older,
thinking,
but
you know, like I like reading her stuff. It's
Makes
but
one of us,
honestly,
but,
it's not great. And his stuff is. And there is no sane world where she is living at the same time as him and she gets any award and he does not. Like, he should get all of the Canadian awards rather than her. Honestly, right now I've realized she's produced a lot of stuff and she has some Harvard wallpaper.
she might have got the wallpaper, I'm not sure, but I think she did attend Harvard or one was it Wellesley, the women. I think it's Harvard. She's aggrieved and legitimately in the way she was treated. But that was like the early 60s.
That's what I'm saying. And whereas he's a journalist, but
I wonder if he has
is so
wallpaper.
much more than a journalist. I mean, he's such a great writer, and I just wish there were more of him so that he could keep up with my reading, so that I would have more to read of him, because I love reading his stuff. It's not to say that I've loved reading every one of his works as much as, you know, some are better than others, whatever. But this one was a great read, I thought. The main character is an autistic woman, and he has a way, I don't know if anybody else could do this, but he makes the character absolutely relatable, and the other characters are largely irrelevant, which is interesting, right? It's an interesting story just for that. I mean, you get to know the other characters. Unlike Margaret Atwood, he can write different characters fairly well, you know, better than her.
Sadly better than her, because that's not his strength.
That's not his strength. But anyway, he also does some other things. I was going to bring out we had this art magazine, which is a really bad art magazine, but it's
we'll review it eventually, but you can talk about it certainly in preliminary.
It's published in Alberta, though.
Calgary.
Yeah. So
what is it, Arts West or something like that?
But
we'll
Galleries
deal
West,
with
I think.
Galleries West, exactly.
But it's not a good magazine.
And it is funded, at least in part, by Pauline and me.
Well, the Canadian government, and as is
Albertan government, I should say.
okay. But this is money well spent. Canadian
content.
Well, yes. I mean, he has people coming in from different places, you can think, oh, well, I've been there, or I'm from there, or whatever, and it makes these characters more real to Canadians, and I don't know, relatable, whatever, or like, you know, somebody from, this could be somebody you know. So it makes the story seem more, I don't know, legitimate, whatever. But anyway, we had this Galleries West, I think it was, magazine kicking around for ages, and it was showing some Douglas Coupland art, and it's not my cup of tea. It was better than what I pulled off yesterday with my art, but anyway, but a lot of my art is way better. Yeah. But I can't write like this. And I mean, he does other things. It says he's a visual artist and sculptor, furniture designer, and screenwriter. So he's done a number of things. And, what can Margaret Atwood do? I mean, you said that she gave a quote once that when she was young, she realized she could do anything or something like that, or that.
If she set her mind to do it.
But what has
Many
she
things.
done? You know, put that.
Okay. She would have written essays. She's written, pretty sure, short stories,
I know.
novels. I'm just going through it, trying, and so-called free verse. You know, like I was.
Anyway,
they tried to
I think it's
beat
better,
free
is what I'm
verse
saying.
into me. When I was at university taking creative writing, majoring in English, I was kind of going, maybe there's something to it. And how I cured myself of that maybe is one summer, 1982, I was house sitting for a very nice professor, philosophy professor, and the World Cup was happening, so I watched a lot of World Cup, and I got hold of I think almost all of her published so-called poetry, free verse, and I got hold of the collected works, and not complete really, but collected works of W.H. Auden. I got through it all of Auden's stuff, and all of this so-called
Well,
poetry.
you've been through it a few times
And,
because we went through it when you were dying of cancer there. When you were,
Okay.
so I was getting all art and stuff from the library then.
Anyway, I believe in reading.
Yeah.
At any rate, that's when I cured myself of the free verse thing. I'm going, how on earth do I compare this junior league stuff with W.H. Auden? I'm not talking about Auden's most anthologized stuff, which is garbage. It's he's along with William Butler Yeats, even more so. He improved from his the works of his non-age or nonage. The stuff that's anthologized, I think it's anthologized because he was a commie or a fellow traveler. But it's awful stuff. The stuff in the early 30s, maybe even the late 20s, but somewhere around the early 30s, just terrible stuff. And the big trouble, I think, for the anthologizers is most of his best stuff is after World War II, and he kind of made a conversion to religion. It's a little bit the
Well,
trouble.
and it's not a fashionable religion. I mean, Christianity isn't palatable to
No religion is
the
palatable.
art scene.
No religion is palatable
Anyway.
to the art scene as that religion is. In other words, they kind of make up their religion, right? They did the same thing with Freud, faux lefties. Freud, by the accounts that I've run across and what I've read, was a fairly conservative kind of guy, but there's all sorts of people who wanted to like play fast and loose with their flies, using Freud as an excuse for it and stuff like that. So a lot of what came out in the 60s was, the sexual revolution was based on a whole bunch of people's misreading of Freud. So
Okay, so with Coupland, I'm going to talk about his strength. And, well, there's a lot of strengths, actually. I'm going to talk about the primary one, which I think this is why so many people, not just me, but so many people love reading his stuff. And there's the section at the back of this book that's called Future Legend, and it's basically it's like a little dictionary of his things, which I think what he did is he came up, I don't know, but I think he came up with these things, these little ideas, and then from there he plunked them into a story. But because, I don't know, I've spent a lot of time when I was younger, well, when I was age 10 and I don't know, maybe I gave it up around age 13 or 14. I read a lot of Stephen King, and then occasionally I'd pick up a Stephen King book again and I'd read it for like nostalgia or whatever, right? So, but I shouldn't have been reading that in my youth. I had trouble sleeping and was scared a lot. But anyway, that's what I was reading, and when I don't know, maybe 10 years ago, James and I were listening to a Stephen King audiobook, I think, together, and you were noticing how he was chunking in, he was just putting in some popular culture stuff, just throwing it in, and he's like, I can see how that, people relate to that or whatever, and so Douglas Coupland does that, but he makes his own popular culture up. He is not just putting things in, it's relatable to people in the generation or generations that are reading him. In
Generation
this
X
time
and others.
place, right? Yeah, my generation mostly, but I'll give you a few examples because it's hard for me to describe this without. So this would be his sort of thing. His sort of dictionary. So collapse attraction. The situation in which people are usually at their most attractive and interesting shortly before a total personality collapse. Well, some of us are attracted to those who are vulnerable because it makes us feel good by comparison, or it makes us feel good to be able to help, or to think we can help. It also turns out that if you're convinced that nobody could possibly like you, you often become less inhibited. Not caring gives you a bulletproof aura of mystery and aloofness. That's one. And I don't know what I was bookmarking on this page. Deromanticizing dysfunction. Writes Alice Flaherty, all the theories linking creativity to mental illness are really implying mild disease. People may be reassured by the fact that almost without exception, no one is severely ill and still creative. Severe mental illness tends to bring bizarre preoccupation and inflexible thought. As the poet Sylvia Plath said, when you're insane, you're busy being insane. All the time. When I was crazy, that's all I was. I thought that was great. And because a lot of people mistake that. Oh dear, I took that off without knowing where I was going. Oh, post-adolescent expert syndrome. The tendency of young people around the age of 18, males especially, to become altruistic experts on everything, a state of mind required by nature to ensure warriors who are willing to die with pleasure on the battlefield. Also the reason why religions recruit kamikaze pilots and suicide bombers almost exclusively from the 18 to 21 age range. Kyle, I never would have guessed that when you were up in your bedroom playing World of Warcraft all through your teens, you were in fact becoming an expert on the films of Jean-Luc Godard. The inability of teens to consider the consequences of risky action is due to the fact that their brain's development is only 80% finished. The cortex matures from back to front, leaving connection and development of the frontal lobe incomplete until somewhere in the mid to late 20s. Not surprisingly, the frontal lobe is home to reasoning, planning, and judgment. And which brings us back to this season, which it was mostly, there was a common, Boston Legal is great for, or was great for, bringing a lot of important issues to mind so that people would actually start thinking about things and go, wait a minute, maybe the way I've been thinking about things is incomplete and I need to do further research or whatever. So I think it's a great show. It's not the best show ever or anything like that by far. It's, it kind of reminds me of a really good Matlock or something like that. I enjoy watching it. And it's very comfortable for me. But not everything that they say I agree with. The ways that they're leaning, sometimes they're pussyfooting around things or leaving things out to be more leftist, I don't know, popular leftist than is in reality. I don't know which. Anyway, it doesn't matter. You come up with your own idea when you watch it. It's fine. But this season there was a common thread. It was their common theme was parenthood, really, and the responsibility, rights, whatever, of the caregiver, nurturer, whatever, guardian. And that stretched to not only parents, but also the medical system. There was a episode where a doctor was had given lethal injections to a few patients without their permission. And it was, angel of mercy sort of thing, whatever. And that's not okay. And let's see, there was an episode with a woman who was having a relationship with her son. So that was interesting. There was an episode where...
Peg off of...
Yes. Well, she's excellent.
Family, what was that?
Married with Children.
Children.
Anyway, there was an episode where a woman had been bought as a slave when she was 7 years old, and she was pregnant with her owner's child, and the husband and wife that owned her wanted to, or told her that they were going to sell the child. So she ended up murdering the man. And when she was free, she didn't really want to be free. It was she didn't understand that she was a slave. She didn't understand that she wasn't going to have a home with the woman anymore. It was, but anyway, interesting issues to think about. And well, I'm going to get on to human genetic engineering because I might run out of time if I don't.
Yeah.
So, page 119, Chinese census of 2000 and Indian census of 2001. The gender imbalance is greater in wealthy urban areas than poor rural areas. In Hainan province, China,
that's in the south,
there are 135 boys per 100 girls. The normal ratio is 106 boys to 100 girls. In an affluent suburb of Delhi, there are 126 boys per 100 girls. Page 120. For the second children in China, there are 151 boys per girl. For the third children, 159 boys per girl. 1984 UNICEF report, Bombay, of the 8,000 aborted fetuses found at one clinic, 7,999 were female. Sperm sorting occurs. Each sperm contains only one of the two chromosomes that the embryo will have. If the sperm has a Y chromosome, the male embryo will result. If the sperm has an X chromosome, a female embryo will result. Page 121. This was invented in U.S. by an agriculture scientist. The X chromosome in humans is 2.8% larger than the Y chromosome. Sperm are stained with fluorescent dye, and the X chromosome reflects more light under laser light. The success rate for identifying females is 91% and 73% for IDing males. Sperm donated in morning of woman's ovulation date, sorted and then injected in the afternoon. 21% of customers get pregnant. The average customer makes 3 attempts. Page 127, flavor saver tomato ratio, rats refused to eat it, so it was force-fed to them. Several got stomach lesions and 7 of 40 died in 2 weeks. It was still approved, but was taken off the market in 3 years. People didn't like the taste. Page 166, type 1. Type 1 aerobic metabolized fat muscles, type 1 muscles, can keep going for a long time but aren't good for short, intense activities. Example, heavy lifting. Type 2 anaerobic muscles burn sugar. They tire quickly but great for short actions. Endurance athletes, long distance runners, swimmers, cycling have up to 90% type 1. Sprinters and weightlifters have approximately 80% type 2. Page 167, insulin growth factor, a protein builds muscle. Myostatin inhibits muscle growth and is involved in developing fat. Page 178, many American states enforce sterilization laws. In 2002, North Carolina repealed its law. Not that long ago. Page 179, in 1974, U.S. District Court Judge Gerhard Gessel, over the last few years, an estimated 100,000 to 150,000 low-income persons have been sterilized annually in federal-funded programs in which they were improperly coerced into accepting a sterilization operation under the threat that various federally funded benefits would be withdrawn. Page 219. Affluent, educated, white, secular males tend to be pro-animal cloning. Most feminists, environmentalists, people of color tend to be against it. Page 295. Belgium, China, Cuba, Singapore, and UK, South Korea will allow cloning research. Israel, Sweden, and some others may permit it. Argentina, Canada, Denmark, Estonia, Finland, France, Germany, Iceland, Italy, Japan, Lithuania, the Netherlands, Norway, Peru, Romania, Slovenia, Spain, and Switzerland have banned it explicitly. And there was mention, the author seems to think there's he mentions racism and stuff like that for a lot of this issues that I was talking about. And the author mentioned there used to be, well, there were a lot of people writing about, and you've probably heard it, even if you're younger, I know I have, that Asian people are the smartest people in the world, and Caucasian people are in the middle, and African people are have the lowest IQs in the world. And
so that's coming from a guy called.
So the author did bring that up, that the IQs of African Americans were said to be lower or whatever, and it's. But
well, yeah. So it's a guy Philippe something or other.
My point is,
Benin.
what does it matter if somebody's IQ is lower? I care about aggression. If somebody's IQ is lower, and like it may very well be that African Americans have lower IQ. I'm not saying that they do. I don't care if they do. I don't care if Asians have the highest IQs in the world. Either way, whatever. If they're aggressive, I have a problem. Because if a person is really, really dumb and aggressive, well, how are you going to be able to control? It's like having a pit bull. I have a problem with aggressive people. It's if people are passive, and what does it matter? You know, people have this idea that, oh well, the best genes are this way or that way or whatever, and there's some things good about some. You know, people are a mix of. You take something away, like say you're breeding a crop for certain traits. You boost up one thing, you get some trade-offs. And I think that's the way nature is. You know, you get some good and some bad with whatever, right? So I don't see why people try to justify sterilizing other people or preventing them from having rights or whatever, based on, I mean, who decides which genes are most beneficial, or which, you know, some people have theorized that Down syndrome is the way of the future. That's where humans are going, or whatever, evolving. I don't know. I don't care. But in any case, why can't each one of the Down syndrome people have one kid each, you know, if they want to have a child and whatever? I mean,
Anyway, I think the most, I wouldn't say popular, but renowned or whatever, proponent of
eugenics?
No. Of making something out of differences in IQ is a guy called Philippe Rushton, or Philip Rushton, I don't know how you pronounce his name. It's spelled Philippe. I don't know if he's still alive. I think he worked out at University of Western Ontario for the longest time. And he was trumpeting that there was a huge difference between average IQs for whites and those for blacks. He was also would trumpet quite loudly that there was marginal difference. between Orientals and whites. In other words, it would be
Oh,
like
was
this.
he Caucasian?
Rushton, it sounds English. Philippe
Yeah.
sounds French. So,
Oh, yeah, okay. Well, anyway.
well, like he was saying, Orientals had the highest IQ, but marginal difference in huge. And it might be true. I know a person of color who's a communist. I used to know him in the 80s, and he used to say, IQ kind of as a reflection, if you're looking at it across society, how long the society's had writing, and it's history. That might be.
Oh, well, sure. I mean, when you went to, by the time you got into the public school system, you already knew how to read.
Yeah.
Because your parents were teachers and they taught you. But there were probably a lot of people in desks right beside yours that had no clue. They were just learning the alphabet and, or whatever.
Yeah. So I
behind you,
don't
years
know
behind
what he was actually getting at. I think, sadly, one of the things that you get with a culture like that is with cultures that it's has a lower value. That's really what determines, I think, how high an IQ to be found in a certain culture is if learning is denigrated. People aren't going to have high IQs. They're not going to read or whatever. So
yeah, it matters when people value education. So
like the Scottish people, when they got hold of Presbyterianism, Calvinism, I think they started to stress learning. I think before then, before John Knox, that would be something like the mid-1500s, mid-16th century, we're probably somewhat a little like as portrayed in Braveheart, that we got compliments of that idiot Australian. What is his name? Mel Gibson?
Yeah.
It's Mel Gibson or something else. I think they were pretty, and like, don't get all upset because I've got part Scottish. Okay, so I don't think that they were that cultured. And then afterwards, it got to the point where in the mid 18th century, 19th century, 1800s, they're looking at the top schools in the world, and they were in Germany and in Scotland. Okay. So they've just gone from almost like one extreme to the other.
So
it's a
who
cultural
knows? In
thing.
100 years, the same people that are being called the lowest IQ people that a lot of people are pushing to the side, they could be right up there. If they value education and they decide, then
if for example, with blacks, they can't go around, like idolizing idiots like Kobe Bryant and LeBron James. And however much I might like the way he talks, Snoop Dogg and Notorious B.I.G. and whomever, Drake, and putting down, what was his name? Steve Urkel? Was that the name of that geeky guy?
I don't
know. The 80s and 90s?
But I want to say that this book, before the
values.
thing runs out, I didn't like the way this was written. I have never encountered a book that the author really did a lot of research, so with so much research that was so poorly written. It's not that the